Good morning, this is Gilbert Bates. This video continues a series of videos that I'm making about suicide or my journey through suicidal ideation. And this episode I'm going to call my journey from numbness, like being numb, no feeling, to actually being a feeling person. So when I first got triggered, I just cried for 2 days. I know a lot of people do this. You read about it all the time. Something happens in your life and you just start crying. And in my case, I couldn't stop. It was coming from very deep down somewhere, and I just couldn't stop it. And now, eventually things calmed down a bit, but I got really depressed, and then I happened to be at the dinner table one evening, and I felt as though I was spiraling down. And if I felt that if I let myself go into that spiral, that I'd end up being crazy. I'd wake up in a hospital bed, in a lunatic asylum, I suppose, as we used to call them back in my day. End up in a lunatic asylum, and that was really scary. So I got my wife to drive me to a hospital, and rather than feel what I was feeling, I sort of asked to be bombed out. I don't want to be in this life. I don't want to be in this realm the way it is. So they gave me medication, and I was bombed out. Now the second thing that happened to me was that after I was in hospital for a day or two, I went out shearing. I went out to a shearing shed where was surprised that I could shear a sheep with being in such a confused state of mind. But shearing's an automatic thing, so that wasn't too bad. I could still work and shear sheep. However, at afternoon smoke-a time, one of the young workers in the shed came into the shed with a rifle, a .22 rifle, and I was struggling with my suicidal thoughts. And when I saw that rifle, I just really went, I nearly spaced out. I just didn't know what to do. But I used a lot of force to stay with the situation, to shear out the last run, get myself home, have a shower, and go to the hospital. And then when I walked through those hospital doors, I felt the relief. I'm safe. I'm not going to do anything stupid. Just bomb me out again. So they were the first two experiences where I was feeling deeply, but the way out of it was to actually bomb me out, like not feel the situation. So, and that kind of happened when I went on medication. I went to see a psychiatrist who put me on medication, and that's the same type of thing, where it controls what I'm doing. It controls the feeling. It keeps the bad feelings down, so that life was more manageable, but manageable from a robotic situation. And I didn't really know what to do. So my journey into feelings started when I took myself off of medication. After about 8 or 9 months, I decided I didn't want to be on this medication. It wasn't doing me much good, I didn't think. So I wanted to go off it. So I took myself off the medication, and then soon after that, I was out in the paddock in my little tractor with the sheepdog, and the sheepdog was being a little bit silly. That's what sheepdogs do, not when they're not trained properly. But I got really angry at it, and I just really lost my anger so badly at the sheepdog. I got embarrassed with myself, but then I thought, I'm not really angry at that sheepdog. There's something else going on. So I got off the tractor, and I thought about what was going on in my mind, and thought about the trigger that I received, and the thought came to my mind that I have rights too. Whatever rights the other person had, that trampled my rights. And so I said, I have my rights too, and I got angry about that. And I kicked the tyre on the tractor and just let my anger rip. I have my rights too. And so that was important. So that was the first time that I'd let my feelings out, and it was really good because I was able to stay off the tablets, because I'd released a little bit of the pain. And you'll see releasing pain from the brain. That was probably the start of my journey of releasing some pressure, enough to allow me to go off the tablets. I wasn't cured by any means, but it was the start of a healing journey. The next time I felt feeling was when I went to the bloke I'll call a shaman. There were 6 or 7 men in a teepee in the Adelaide Hills, and we were told, like we're there for a few days, and after a while we were told to go out into the bush somewhere and just sit and think about things and then come back in a specified amount of time. But I didn't want to go outside, so there was a kind of a buffalo skull dressed up, like the Indian, we're in an Indian type teepee. So I stood in front of this buffalo head. That sounds a bit gruesome, I suppose, but to me it was like the Wakan Tanka, which is the North American Indian word for the Great Spirit. And that's what I felt I was in front of. And because I was in a situation where I was being listened to, like each man got their turn to talk and be listened to, I was in a safe place and I was listened to, and I was just given the freedom to do whatever I wanted. And when I looked up at the Wakan Tanka, the Great Spirit represented in the buffalo head, I just broke down and cried. I just cried really, really deeply, more than I've ever cried in my life. It was so much of a relief. It was surprising, but so that was the start of my journey. There's the 2 times where I went to hospital to have medication to stop my feelings, and then later on I had the episode with the tractor and the episode in the tent where I was encouraged to feel. So that's the turning point in my life, to be an unfeeling person to go to a feeling person. Unfortunately, it involved a lot of crying, but it was very, very revealing. Now, what suicide is a pushing down of all those feelings, and then it gets too much, and so you end up committing suicide. Now, I want to go back to the shearing shed situation that I mentioned earlier, where when I was triggered deeper into my pain, I was trying to push it down. Here's what should have happened. I should have gone into the wool bin and just cried my eyes out, just let myself go insane, let myself lose it in the wool bin. But when you're in a shearing shed with 3 or 4 other men, they wouldn't know what's going on, and I didn't really know what was going on myself. So that's why I'm making this video. There are times where we just need to lay down and cry rather than go and take tablets. Just feel what you're feeling. So that's what I want to say about, this will be good for people in outback situations, out in the country where you can't get to a doctor or a hospital. Just lay down in the corner of the shed somewhere, lay down in a wool bin and cry your eyes out if that's how you feel. If you feel suicidal and life's against you, just release the pressure a bit, and then hopefully that will be enough to release the suicidal feelings or take the pressure off. You're not going to get rid of it all at once, but it's enough to take the pressure off to the point where hopefully you won't do anything stupid. But it's not talked about much because people don't understand that. I say that the medical profession's idea of suicide is very much an intellectual view. That's all they're learning, is that they learn things intellectually about anything in the medical situation. But we are more than our intellect. If you look at that diagram behind me, we are our feelings and we are also our sensations. So suicide needs to be understood from the 3 levels of mind. And what I'm talking about today is my journey from the intellectual level to trying to sort it out intellectually, to actually feel the pain and cry into the pain. And then eventually I went to Los Angeles and continued that journey of crying into the pain. But then the surprising thing is that when I had felt enough feeling, the journey continued into the sensation level of mind. And the sensation level of mind is where our soul is, it's where our spirit is, it's where if we're not treated properly as children, that area of the brain gets damaged, and that's what causes suicide. It's right deep in our brains, and we don't understand that. But if we can learn to actually feel our pain, we can relieve the pressure. Now, I want to say that if you're on medication, stay on medication, and if you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. But I think we're at the stage now where people can talk about it, but we've got to get into the situation where we can start to feel it. Get 4 or 5 men together and talk to each other, and it's okay to cry. I think that men should cry at least once a month. I still cry once a month or a couple of times a month. It's very relieving. It's not sissy. It actually makes me stronger. It makes me feel more loving. Yeah, it makes me stronger in a loving sense. I don't feel weak when I cry. I feel as though I'm getting rid of the pain out of my brain, and the more pain I can get out of my brain, the more that I enjoy life. And that's important for me, should be important for everyone. We need to understand really what suicide is. There's a lot of organisations in Australia trying to, commit to stopping suicide altogether. Well, we need to understand suicide from the 3 levels of brain if we're going to do that. We got to understand how to treat suicide and suicidal thoughts, understand what it is, and then eventually down the track, stop treating our children so badly that they're going to try and commit suicide, or will commit suicide years down the track. And that's what my suicide was. It was how I was treated as a child. My parents didn't love me. That's ruining my soul, if that's one way of putting it. But it meant I didn't have a feeling life. I didn't have a sensing feeling life. I just grew up being a non-feeler, and that's not a very good way to live life. So hopefully this video has been some help, that even if you're not suicidal but you have suicidal feelings, just lay down and try and cry into it and see what that does for you. I hope it turns out well for you. Thank you.